Welcome everyone. My name's Irene Lefton. We're going to introduce ourselves in just a minute, but first I want to thank our sponsors. So we have two sponsors tonight actually. The Customer Success Leadership Network is Maranda and I both are involved with that, and as is Tom. And we are a group of people that puts on these meetups around the Bay Area and around the country actually. And our other sponsor is Medallia, who's here tonight, and I just want to give Raj just a couple minutes to come up and speak for Strikedeck by Medallia.
No, I don't want to be recorded. So I will not speak into the mic. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Raj. I work at in the Strikedeck team, now part of Medallia. It's our honor and our pleasure to host this meetup here. I think it's the first time we've done one in our own office, so it's just fantastic. Thank you for taking the time on a Thursday evening to come here. I'm sure it's going to be worth your while, right? My only suggestion to you guys would be, let's make this interactive, let's ask them questions. I'm sure they'll love to have as many questions as they can get.
We don't want to talk at you, so talk to
Expected we are very passionate about customer success. Pretty much everybody in the company is into customer success, and this is something that we feel very passionately about. So this is actually learning for us too, right? So again, welcome, and hope you have a great evening, and we hope to see you again at future events.
Let's have a round of applause for our sponsors. Thank you. Okay, so everybody loves a good war story. And we're going to talk tonight about the good, the bad, and the unspoken. And we're going to do some back and forth between Maranda and I. That's fine. And we'll first introduce ourselves, but I want to talk just for a minute about why stories are so important. How many of you, by show of hands, use storytelling as a part of your communication methods? So more than half, which is great. So, stories are things that we can use with customers. Stories are a way that people relate to things versus just seeing things or being told about things. We learn a lot more when we hear a story. We remember stories. And so and networking events like this are actually great opportunities to share your stories before and after as you're networking, and then Maranda and I will be sharing some with you today. Hopefully also there's some lessons learned. So we're going to share 6 stories with you guys tonight. 2 good, 2 bad, 2 unspoken. And we will take Q&A at the end, and we might ask you some questions if you want to engage during, but we'd like to get kind of through the stories and then have a nice interactive session. And we are going to be anonymizing, so we're not going to say company names or call out people as we talk about our stories, but these are all real things that actually happen to each of us. So let me get into the intros. I messed it up when I dropped it? I might have.
Maybe we can have Tom just hit the laptop when you point at him. There you go.
We'll get it going again. So, who am I and why should you listen to me about war stories? Well, you can see the information, including my contact information, up on the slide. And I was a 2018 top CS strategist, thank you. And I am a customer success evangelist. That's what I call myself. I'm a serial VP of customer success. I've held that title a handful of times in different companies. My focus is typically early stage companies, although I have worked in some very large companies, not necessarily customer success. I came from the professional services side into this, but I've managed teams from a kind of chief customer officer perspective that have included customer success, support, account management, even pre-sales, I'm writing the book. Many of you know that already. We're in the home stretch with the book. I expect it to be done close to the end of this year or early next year for publication, and that's me.
And who am I? For it? Apparently, I'm the person that owns one blazer. The same blazer picture that I have in my headshot unlonely. So I just want to call that out first.
It was taken earlier today.
Yes,
That's
yes, absolutely, there you go. I am, of course, Miranda Dziekonski. I know quite a few people in the audience, either through LinkedIn, through events, or just through the community. I was nominated as a top 100 customer success strategist in 2017 and 2018. And we didn't get it in 2019 because it didn't exist anymore. So if it would have existed, I guarantee we would have got it, right? I'm also a VP of Customer Success currently at Swiftly. But I've held various positions all the way from director up to COO, and own various functions from customer success, professional services, human resources, sales, collections, you kind of get the idea. I've been really fortunate to land in a couple of really cool companies, and if y'all looked at my LinkedIn, you'll see where. Had a couple of IPOs, acquisition, so I've been really fortunate in my career in the startup world. I do think of myself more as an operations professional, but customer success is really where my passion is. So that's why I'm here talking to you all. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about. The last thing I just want to call out is I am the founder of A Little Saucy, and I'm going to let you all know a little joke about this. I created A Little Saucy thinking it was the most clever name ever. My husband, who is here, heard me when I found the domain. I'm like, this is going to be the best website ever. SAASY, software as a service-y, right? Little did I know until my 16-year-old, he's now 18, went on and went to SASSY, which happens to be an adult website, that I now spent like 3-4 months building and coding and creating this website that if you just change one letter, takes you to something incredibly inappropriate.
Oh.
So, every time you hear me talk about this, I always call it out, SAASY. So, next slide. All right, so we are gonna start with the good, and this is the easy stuff, right? I think we can all think about a lot of good stories about our customers, our experiences, how we've helped scale. And so it's going to be pretty easy for us to think that through, right? Mine that I want to share is actually one of my prouder experiences, and it was creating a Voice of the Customer program. How many here have created a Voice of the Customer program at their organization? A few? Okay, awesome. So when I joined one of the companies that you can find on my LinkedIn, I noticed that there was a big disconnect between the 50 to 60 team members and who their customer was. The engineers didn't really understand who they were building for, product didn't understand who they were supporting, sales was sometimes bringing in the wrong fit customers to make quota. So I created this Voice of the Customer program that not only shared valuable insights with the entire team, but got the customer in front of the company. And that was the most powerful thing. I had folks come into our San Francisco office, and if they weren't local, I would set up a big video monitor and have them join us. And we would ask them questions, the real questions, not just, tell us fluffy things about why you love us, but tell us why we suck. And it really resonated. I've never seen 50 people sitting on the edge of their seat, even the engineers, waiting to hear. So that was a big win and something I'm incredibly proud of in regards to the good. Takeaway from that is just make sure that you are inserting the voice of the customer at every juncture. As customer success professionals, it is our responsibility to do that, and it's our responsibility to evangelize for them. And on to Irene.
So as Miranda said, the good stuff is easy. We all have a lot of successes. We tend to focus on our successes a lot. So I want to talk about a success that's also kind of, in a sense, bringing in customer voice, but not in a formal program. So I worked for a company a few years ago where we had a real difficult customer that we needed to turn around. And you might think this is a bad, but actually it's not a bad. It's a good, because you can turn around a good customer and really have a very, very different outcome than you expect with that customer. In fact, studies show that if you have a problem, if you actually have a negative interaction that you resolve successfully, that you have a stronger relationship than if you have all good all the way along, okay? Because there's more earned trust and earned respect from overcoming issues. So in this company, it was an early stage startup. I joined as the VP of Customer Success and come to discover that there is a single customer that represents 30% of the ARR. Not something that you really want to have, a third of your ARR tied up with a single customer. And the first day that I met them, they told me, by the way, we're not renewing. Okay? We are not happy. We have not been happy. We're really glad that you guys have finally woken up and brought in a VP of Customer Success, because I was the first in seat in this company. It was a 5-year-old company. But we're not happy. And I said, whoa, 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 you guys got to give me a chance to turn this around, okay? So it was a real uphill battle. It took a lot of different activities on my part and a team effort. We had to shift the priorities on the executive staff, and I had to use data in order to do that. So I had to first collect some data about usage and who was really using what in terms of the overall product, and get the product team to start to shift some things. So the product team had to be involved. This customer actually was sort of a bad fit customer, because we had pivoted our go-to-market and we had gone in a direction away from what they originally bought, and we had to kind of make a little bit of a U-turn and go back to what we were originally going to do, at least to be able to support and serve them for part of the time. And in the end, we were able to avoid that churn. We had an extremely strong relationship with that customer, and actually they ended up acquiring the company, and that was the exit. And it was a reasonable exit for that company as a result of that customer turnaround. So that was the good story, and the lessons learned were the seat at the table was critical. If I had not reported to the CEO, been able to influence both the product and the sales team and the marketing team in terms of, kind of making this U-turn back on the product direction and what we were going to do and get the resources. And the other part was sort of what Maranda talked about, which is the listening, because we had to hear from the customer what it was that was broken, because we were making a lot of assumptions, all of which were wrong. And then, kind of the whole thing is, going through the tough times helped to build the relationship on many levels, and it takes a village, because it took really shifting everyone in the whole company to get to that good. Next slide, please. So, now we're going to talk about the bad. Oh, you want one too many? Other way.
Okay,
One more. There we go. The bad. The unhappy face. Okay, so we each have a story to share on this. I'm going to do mine first since I'm already up here.
Yeah.
Come on in. So we all learn from our failures. So what happens that's bad, whether it's with our customer or whether it's with our own career or whether it's with our company, there's always lessons there. And actually that's one of the things we want to impart to all of you guys today. We're really, as we were putting this together, we were really focused on stories that had good lessons behind them. Things that you could take away, apply, and use. So my story on this, and I actually had two stories that two different companies that sort of had similar stories, but I'm going to talk just about one. And it has to do with the lack of senior management support for customer success. So how many of you here have reported into a leader, maybe not the CEO, maybe the CEO, maybe a head of sales, who really didn't buy into customer success? Anyone? There's a few of you, okay? I certainly have. I have at least twice in my career come across this. So, one of the lessons is every time I experience this, I learn more questions to ask in the interview process to make sure that there truly is support. But lip service is a real problem. And many companies, even today, do not have a good focus on the post-sale side of the customer journey. They are all about new business, and especially I work in early stage companies. It can be really hard because, that new customer acquisition, that new logo acquisition, getting that revenue number doubled, tripled, whatever you need to do is top of mind. And once you've got the customer, it kind of falls off. So management will give a lot of lip service to being customer-centric, but they don't always put things behind it. So I'm going to talk about one company where it was actually a board-sponsored hire. So a funding round had just occurred, and as a part of that funding round, the investor said, you will hire a VP of customer success and build a customer success team. Otherwise, you don't get this money. So, okay, they took the money. They're going to do it, right? So it was a lengthy hiring process. That should have been my first clue. If you're ever stuck in a lengthy hiring process, there is probably some level of lack of support for the role. And that was my first hint that I missed on this one. And once I got on board, even the reactive processes which were already in place, like support and some of the product feedback loops and things, they were very, very broken. There was a huge disconnect with the customer. There was really no input, no customer-driven input, and no real connection. I mean, we didn't even have the names of the people who were using the software in our customer. We didn't have the buyer names for sure because they were doing 2- and 3-year contracts. So kind of inherited a little bit of a mess. And I do have to say it was an inexperienced CEO. He was a first-time CEO, and he is no longer a CEO. He took a different role. But as CS leaders, it's our job to kind of carry the mantle of the customer centricity in the company. So it's our job to educate and to work to change the culture. And sometimes you will be successful with that, and sometimes you might not. So the lessons I took away from this were, first, do a better job of assessing the level of support, ask the hard questions. I already ask a lot of hard questions, don't get me wrong. I mean, this happened to me once before, and then the second time, the CEO told me, he said, I've never been in an interview this hard for an executive ever before. But obviously, I still missed the boat, because he was there, he said he was supportive, he definitely gave lip service, and I told Miranda this at one point, about 6 months in, we were having a conversation, because I wasn't happy with the level of support I was getting from him, and the budget I was getting, and we kept, focusing on the wrong things, in my opinion. And he said to me, actually, well, at least I'm not actively sabotaging you. And I thought, why would you even think that? Did you think you were going to actively sabotage me? Well, I'm really glad you didn't, but it's still really hard, So if you don't have support, you got to try to build it. But if you can't, sometimes you have to move on, okay? Some leaders are going to fail on their own, and you can be a part of that failure or not, especially if you report to the CEO. So if you can, leave or make a change. And if you stick it out, kind of know where you're at in terms of sticking it out, because you're not going to have the kind of impact that you want to have. So get yourself to the best place you can be. Pick one thing that you can actually do. Get yourself some accomplishment for while you're there. So that's my lesson learned on the bad.
Yeah, and I think Irene said something that's really crucial that before I move into my bad, and I want to call this out. Early stage startups are a beast within themselves. They have their own good, bad, and unspoken. How many folks here have worked for companies that have been like pre-Series B or startups? A few. So there is no CEO training school, and it's good and it's bad. It's good because they have this like ambition. They're going to solve the world's problems. It's bad because sometimes when you have one that's in early stage and it's their first company or their first job, they don't have any experience and they don't know what they don't know. So it's up to us to help them and help bring them along. Just know that when you join early stage startups, that's something you're signing on for. And sometimes it works, and in Irene's case, sometimes it doesn't. So it's just good to always be cognizant of that when you're going into these early stage startups. For me, my bad is a bad fit customer. How many here have had to fire a customer? Okay, It is literally one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, especially at an early stage startup, when you know the clock is ticking on your runway. You know that you have probably 12 months in the bank, and you need that, $10,000, $20,000. And if you fire that customer, you have to give it back. But you have to make a decision. Do I fire the customer, give back the money, do the right thing, and show the customer I am a partner with them? Or do I keep that money, have it for the year, and maybe never have them again? Well, my story is I'd come into a company, and I went through, of course, the customer base and, did the typical stuff, segmentation, looking at health, looking at who was being successful. And it stuck out to me that we had one customer who was paying us a decent amount of money that was just not using the product. But I don't think they knew that they weren't using the product. That was the interesting thing. I don't think the executive sponsor knew. And they probably would have realized it eventually when they were looking at their bottom line and they're like, who is this company and why are we giving them all this money? What value are they bringing us? But I raised the flag, and I was new in the company, and everybody looked at me like, shh, what are you doing? Don't bring that up. But I did, and I was the squeaky wheel. I'm like, we've got to do something about this customer. They either need to be onboarded and, brought along, or we gotta make a decision, if it's not the right product for them, to let them go. After digging in deeper and looking at sales notes and figuring out what they were trying to solve for, it was apparent to me that this customer, with our current iteration of product, was not going to be successful. They were sold the product roadmap, not the product. That's a problem. And it happens a lot, actually. And one other call out, it's up to us as customer success, and when we're onboarding those customers and we see that it's been sold, the customer's been sold the product roadmap, we immediately call it out and figure out, A, do we fire them, or B, do we bring them along and figure out how we can make them successful? So ended up firing the customer, and one, they were shocked. If a lot of customers have never been fired and said, I can't take your money, let me give you a refund and give you all the money back. Hi. Yeah, it's a little warm in here. Let me give you a refund and give you all your money back, right? So they were really shocked that we were being that honest. You're really gonna give me my money back? Yeah, absolutely. This was not the right product for you. I'll go in a little bit into things that you should do and look at when you're doing this, but there was a good on this. Another year and a half down the line, the product roadmap was there, and we want them back. They thought very highly of us. They thought we were, this ethical company. Little did they know that, others were like, shh, keep the money. But because of that decision, we managed to bring them back on and retain them and grow them. And they were larger when we brought them back on as well. So we got more money from the get. So there are a few reasons why you would potentially fire a customer. Mine was the product fit. There are, things around attention versus ROI. I've also seen that to where a customer requires all of your attention. There's just no way you can do that sometimes unless they're your only customer. And if they're your only customer, you got different issues, right? So I've also seen folks have to be offboarded because they think that they're going to get a personal support rep and they're spending a couple $1,000s a year with your product, right? So that's a good instance to offboard them. I talked about overall product fit. Another one is change in executive sponsor. This one may not be as apparent, but sometimes you'll have, a lot of the times, you'll have a change in executive sponsor, and that vision that the executive sponsor has for your product doesn't fit with what your product does. So you either have to make a decision to try to bring that executive sponsor along into your product, or move on. And depending on your resources, you have to look at, do you have enough time to bring that executive sponsor along? Sometimes it's easier to cut your losses. A couple of things that I always suggest, and every time you do have to, either you lose a customer to churn, or you have to fire a customer, always postmortem it. I mean, that's the biggest thing. don't ever do this in vain. Really learn from it. Do a postmortem with folks in product, sales, marketing, and if you can get any other technical representation there, it's good to have someone there as well from that arena. So what you're looking for is figuring out what did we sell them versus what do we do? What did we market versus what we really do? And learn from it and iterate and make sure that you're moving the folks along in your team with you.
Who did you have to talk to on the executive team, either the CEO, VP of sales, to fire the customer? How did that conversation go?
It was the CEO, and the conversation was tough. I reported to the CEO. He was also a first-time founder, and I was 5 to 7 years older than him, and I think I intimidated him. So just in my nature, I'm a little bit more on the assertive side. It was a very awkward. It was a very awkward conversation, but I came in with facts and, asked him point blank, do you want to be an ethical company? And he couldn't say no, because everybody likes to say they're an ethical company. But really, you have to figure out whomever you're going to, figure out what their currency is. I knew his currency was that. I knew that he valued his word and he valued his name. So I kind of played that to my advantage.
Bravo. That's a great story.
Thank you. I think we're moving on to the unspoken. The unspoken. Dun, dun, dun. Let's see here. So, do you want to introduce this one, or would you like me to? I think I'm already up here, but I want to make sure.
I think you're introducing this.
Okay. So, the unspoken instead of the ugly. There's a lot of things that happen behind closed doors that no one talks about, right? And we're going to talk about it a little bit here tonight. And it's everything around gender bias, discrimination, maybe where customer success doesn't fit, things of that such. And I'm going to pass it over to Irene because she has a really great story.
You want me to go first?
I think so, because I think I've talked too long to everyone, so I think they're ready for something
Okay.
different.
I'll go first.
yeah.
I'll go first. So, unspoken, we decided not to do the ugly, the good, bad, and the ugly, because there are some things that just don't get talked about. And the reasons that they don't get talked about are because they put your company in a bad light, or they put your customer in a bad light, or they put you in a bad light, so nobody talks about them. But they still have an impact on business in a really big way, usually. So my unspoken story is kind of about discrimination, about gender bias and other kinds of discrimination. How many people in this room feel like they've been discriminated against at some point in their career? So almost every woman raised their hand. And this is a topic that's pretty talked about right now. I did a panel, actually Miranda was on my panel, we did a panel at a meetup back in July, August, something like that in San Francisco, about gender bias and customer success. There's a lot of data around it, there's a big drop-off. Customer success is actually better on gender balance than many other tech fields, but there's still a problem there. And it's a big one. So many people experience these kinds of problems, few people share about them. And it's because the biases and what we do and how we behave is pretty entrenched, and times are constantly changing and social norms are changing. And it's really, really hard to navigate. So, I think it's complicated and there's stigmas, and that's why things don't get discussed. So I have been the only woman in the room on executive teams for most of my career.
Plus one.
And I have a lot of years in my career. I'm older than I look. I've also been accused of discrimination. So in one of my jobs, I had an employee who was failing, who got put on a performance plan and immediately accused me of being a bully and went out on disability and filed a claim against me. So I've been on both sides of the discrimination, and it was a female. And she was not being bullied, and in the end I was there was probably some restitution paid to her, but she left, which is what we needed because she wasn't performing in her job, and we needed to replace that person. We had a tight budget, and we needed a person in the job that could actually do the job. So my story to share on this is, I joined a company in the management team. I was the only woman on the management team. At that time, I reported to the head of sales. And let me describe this gentleman. He was very short. He was a misogynist. He was rude. He was demeaning, not just to me, but to almost everyone. He used to sit in his office with his door open and yell for people. So-and-so, come over here, I need you now, kind of thing. He was insulting, very insecure, and extremely successful. He brought in big deals that he closed, and he was responsible for a ton of revenue. So somehow, all of his misbehavior was kind of overlooked because his results were good. He hired me, and I gave him a pretty tough interview. I remember when the verbal offer was made, before I got the offer, we had taken a walk to go get a cup of coffee. It was after probably 5, it was maybe the 5th interview I'd had with him. And he really wasn't sure whether I was going to accept the job or not. But I was a good fit for this company, and obviously I did get the job. But once I got on board, it was pretty much of an uphill battle with him. He put a lot of roadblocks in my way. He seemed to get great pleasure out of making it hard for other people to do their job. He was a little bit sadistic that way. And I had to figure out how to, 4 months in, I was ready to quit. I'm like, I don't need to deal with this. I can go find someplace better to be. But our CEO at the time said, no. We cannot lose you. You've already, in 4 months, you've added tremendous value. You're the right person for the job. We've got to fix this. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. They actually got him outside coaching. And he went through the coaching, but he didn't really want to change. So he adjusted his behavior with me. And he was extremely professional with me after he went through coaching. But he still yelled out of his office door for other people, men and women. And he was still rude, and he was still arrogant, and he didn't really change. And as his coach said to me somewhere along the way, he knows how to live over here and be a professional person, but he chooses to be over here most of the time because that's his comfort zone, and that's where he is. So, in the end, kind of my takeaways were, you got to speak up, because that's what I did. I went and talked to the CEO, who was his boss, my boss's boss, and bring it to people's attention. And that's what the Enough is Enough and the Me Too and a lot of these other things are trying to do right now, is expose it. And it's hard. It's hard, especially if you're the person who's being discriminated against. So if you see something, say something, because everybody sees it. You see other people being discriminated against all the time for various reasons, for age, for skin color, for religion, for sexual preference, for gender. There's a million different things. We all have biases. We are all prejudiced, every single one of us in our own way. And it's really about being conscious about it and acting consciously for what to do. So offer support. How many of you have been in a meeting where a woman has been shut down in her voice? She makes a suggestion and it gets poo-pooed, and 10 minutes later some guy says the same thing and it gets jumped all over, and let's do it. Stop right there if you're in that meeting and say, that sounds a lot like what so-and-so said. That was her idea first. Bring it up, support the people who are being pushed down, and be explicit. If you're in a hiring position, focus on diversity. Be really aware of your biases. Try to go kind of swing in the other direction a little bit and live over here to help strike the balance. Also really hard to do, but mentor and help others. I know Miranda and I both do this a lot. We both have a million people wanting to get advice and help along their career path. And it's important to do that. Certainly people helped me, for sure. So I want to pay it forward. Because it doesn't happen overnight. The discrimination, the biases, the unspoken things that happen didn't start overnight, nor are they going to end overnight. So it's going to be a long, ugly, bumpy trail, which is part of why it's unspoken. But every single individual has a chance to make a difference in someone else's life around that. So that's my unspoken story.
I want to thank Irene for sharing that. That's really personal, right? And those who came to the, I don't know when it was, panel in June, July, somewhere around there. We spoke a lot about this, and I shared a lot of stories as well. I've worked in male-dominated industries for years. When I was in Michigan, I was in the automotive industry for 9 years, and I was in my 20s. Being in your 20s in the automotive industry is tough. So I think Irene called it out really well. Just find all the men in this room, like, be an advocate. Help the females around you. Find, folks that you can lift up. Because believe it or not, it shouldn't be this way. The men's voices seem to travel farther in an organization. So females really need you in the organization. It's sad, but it's true. Yes?
I would also say the females need to stand up for other females.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In my
Just to
experience,
repeat what was said is females need to stand up for other females. It's being recorded and we have to talk in a microphone. So, and we both agree with that 100%. Where I'm at right now, I own people operations, and we're working on our diversity and inclusion program and things about unconscious bias, all of that. But my story is not as juicy.
I still think it's pretty interesting.
It is. So I joined a company, and I know the CEO really well, and it was an amazing opportunity. Love the product, still love the company, still love the product, still am friends with the CEO. But we were excited. We're like, we're going to build out customer success here. This is going to be revolutionary. It's for the gig economy. That, in my mind, I was like, okay, yeah, we could do this. If anyone could do it, I could build this customer success team out. So it was an on-demand workforce placement product. And I went in and I spent about a year there trying to build out a customer success program for a group of customers who do not want customer success. They don't have any skin in the game. And that should have been a flag for me from the beginning, that they don't have any skin in the game. Why are they going to want customer success, and how is customer success going to drive value? Now, I still believe customer success as a mindset and how we think about the success of a customer is really relevant for this company. But what isn't relevant is having customer success managers assigned to their account. Because the skin in the game they have is the moment they put an order in on the app and need an employee to show up. If the employee shows up, does the work, and it's satisfactory, they're good. They don't want to talk to you. It was a really interesting time though, because we were getting really creative, trying to figure out how could we get more ROI from the product, how for the customer, how can we turn this into something more like, not enterprise, but definitely customer success, relationship management, only around every corner to be battled with the customer. They didn't want to pick up the phone. They didn't want to read your emails. They didn't want to talk to you. And after a year, I actually pulled the CEO and the co-founder in, and I'm sure they may listen to this, so it's not a big deal, but I pulled them in and I looked at them and I said, you pay me too much. You can't afford me for the value I'm driving for you. I'm not going to take your money anymore and I'm going to leave. And he started laughing. He's like, nobody's ever said that to me before. And I'm like, it's the truth. You pay me way too much for what I'm doing. I said, what you need is a really good customer support manager, and I will help you hire one. And I hired one of my former team members from Lending Club to manage their customer support. Everything's working out beautifully. I still go in, I still have a key to the office, right? I still advise them on things, but I had to just pull the plug. After a year, I'm like, this is not working. And I'm doing a big disservice to the company, a big disservice to their brand with their customers, because I have customer success folks that are practically stalking them, trying to get them to engage. And I was doing a disservice to my name brand. Here I am, I know the CEO because of my name brand, and I'm letting him pay me what he's paying me, and I'm not giving him anything back. So I left. And that's my unspoken, because sometimes, even though customer success as a mindset works, sometimes customer success in practice doesn't. It doesn't work for every product. So I would tell folks that when you're going in to these companies and interviewing, make sure that the product is right for customer success, because everybody's jumping on the customer success bandwagon. They think a product needs customer success, that's what's gonna make it successful. No. If it's not right, it's not right. There's not a magic potion that you're gonna plug in with customer success that's gonna make it, just, hockey stick up. So there we go.
Good. So, interesting stories. And most important are gonna be the takeaways. Can you flip us one? So, and I just want to tag a little bit onto what Miranda just said about her unspoken, because I think it's about the business model, the go-to-market and the business model. That's what you have to assess. Not every go-to-market, not every business model requires customer success. If it's all on-prem, it's going to be really hard to do customer success. If it's a, like you said, almost a B2C kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's hard, or even a B2B2C, and sometimes with a channel, the customer success has to happen through the channel, not through your team. So putting in maybe you need a partner success kind of a play versus a customer success kind of play. So we talked about the good, the bad, and the unspoken, and shared some more stories. And we want to just summarize real quickly our takeaway lessons. So I'm going to summarize the good lessons. So, for those things that we do right, don't forget getting a seat at the table is pretty critical. You can turn around customers and turn them into allies, and it might even help build your relationships more. There are several examples of that in our stories. Bring out the voice of the customer however you can. How many of you have read Jeannie Bliss's Chief Customer Officer, the book? Just a few of you. Put it on your reading list. She talks a lot about the voice of the customer in her book.
She's a pretty awesome person.
She is. And she talks about the impact of the stories of people actually hearing in the customer's voices versus hearing in the VP of CS's voice what the customer said, or in the customer success manager's voice what the customer said. So get your customers to write letters, get them on videotape in their words, in their voice. The stories will be much more impactful. So. And there's just huge impacts from the voice of the customer. And you're going to do the bad?
Yeah, I'll do the bad. So I think the first one is really critical. Understand why the company you're interviewing with or you're being hired into is bringing in CS, and what level of support you have. I personally as well, we didn't share this story, but I've had companies where as well the CEO has not been behind me, and I work directly for him. And ultimately, if you don't have that support, if you don't understand what they're trying to solve and why you're going to be there, it's going to be an uphill battle. Also, if you don't have support, I think Irene wrote this one, if you can, think about changing companies. I know that sounds very laissez-faire, but the reality is the average tenure of a VP of CS in Silicon Valley, it's the same as a VP of marketing, 18 months. I wonder why that is, right? And did you ask why is it?
Yeah, why is it?
There's many reasons, and that's probably an entire other conversation.
Well, I think part of it is a really long-term play, and people don't give it the time that it needs to actually.
I think they don't present data in an effective way for senior leadership to digest and work through.
But you can present data, and if you have 6 or 9 months worth of data that you collected, they collected nothing before you got there, then it's hard to make your business case. So that's where the 18 months comes in. You might have a year's worth of data, but.
So let me add to what you just said. the average tenure is 18 months, but the majority of VPs of CSs I know are leaving on their own accord. It's not them being pushed out of the org. Now, I would agree with you that they don't have enough data and they're not presenting it right to the C-level if it was them being pushed out. But I know I'm a data nut, and I've left quite a few times because I knew it wasn't the right place.
Well,
So,
and as one of our colleagues told me actually yesterday when I saw him at another event, he said he just left his company. And he said, yeah, you know, when you go into the interview, ask what the prior VP of CS did and do everything that they didn't. Because when somebody left, you know, maybe they did the segmentation and they built a customer journey, so you don't need to do that. But maybe you need to focus on playbooks, or you need to focus on, you know, other things. So whatever they did do something else, because if they, especially if they got booted, it
Yeah.
wasn't going the direction the management wanted.
Mike, I'll call out one more thing too, because I'm sure that your statement is true for a lot of folks, or some folks, but also in 18 months, startups are very different. So, I mean, I was at Lending Club for 2 years. When I started there, I was employee 67. In 2 years, it was over 500 people. When I started, I had 5 people in my org. When I left, there was over 70. And this has happened at multiple startups I've been in. I'm not right to run a 70-person org, nor do I want to be. That's not my forte. My forte is building and scaling the operations.
Yeah, and there are different phases of customer success, for sure, in different stages of companies, so that's another reason.
Absolutely. And then I think the 2 last ones that we have on here are, you know, work with your team on bad fit customers, come up with a plan, and what you're gonna do with those bad fit customers. Can you bring them along, or do you need to help them find a new home? And then lastly, postmortem. It's really important. If you lose a customer, whether it's with churn or whether it's intentional or unintentional churn, that you learn from it. If you don't learn from it, it was in vain, and it's doomed to repeat itself again and again.
So just to summarize the lessons from the unspoken, as Miranda said, customer success isn't for everyone. Know your market, know your go-to-market, know when it's gonna add value to your company. Customer centricity and servicing customers right is for everyone, but having a proactive customer success team focused on retention, it doesn't fit with every business model. And when you see something, say something. Speak up about it, whether it's gender diversity or some other kind of bias. It's toxic to your company. It's totally toxic, and your customers see it too. And in today's world, as newer generations who care a lot more about values than some people in my baby boomer generation did necessarily, we were much more mercenary, they won't work for companies that have those reputations. They won't even consider interviewing for them. So it's toxic in many, many ways. So speak up and support those around you, and help others, you know, help to change the culture. Everybody can do that. So, we're ready to take questions or hear your stories.
Any questions? Bueller?
I have a question.
All right. Do we want to give you the microphone so it's recorded?
Oh, no, I don't want to.
There you go.
Depends how the question goes. So you both talked about support from executives, CEOs. How much can you tell about that by financially how much they're going to support you? You mentioned fighting for budget, Irene. Can you look at the numbers and just say, boy, they're not giving me enough money to get done what I need to get done? Or is that just not a big thing?
Well, I can tell you that I negotiate my first year budget before I take a job. So both in terms of head count and how much I'm gonna have to spend roughly on infrastructure and other things that I need. I won't go into a job unless we can have that conversation first. Now, you know, budgets change when they grow, when there's a lot of new business and there's a lot of growth, and that's wonderful. And they shrink when there's problems and challenges and runways get short. And I've experienced both sides of that equation. So, you know, I do think you can have those conversations. I think if you don't have the financial conversations, the economic conversations, you have a real potential to set yourself up for failure.
Thank you.
For me, I don't go as in depth as negotiating my budget before I start, I look more at like, I wanna know the runway, look at the last series.
I look at that too, yeah.
Yeah, who are the investors? How many folks are in sales? How many are currently in customer success? What are those ratios?
What's your funnel look like?
Yep. How long is your average sales cycle? How many deals do you currently have in the deal, or in the pipeline? I do get a little bit deep on that type of stuff because it's an indicator to me on, what I'm gonna be able to do with my team and how many resources I have. I usually join around Series A, Series B-ish, right around there. So usually investors are really pushing after that Series A to Series B to see that expansive growth. They wanna just see that, and I wanna know that I'm going to be set up for success. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. Get the microphone.
Yes.
Thanks, Raj.
So this is a question for Maranda, point that you brought up, but maybe I have something to say too. You mentioned that sometimes customer success is not right for an organization, and I'd like to get how you identify that. But let me just give you the context. In my role, in some instances, I've been in a sales cycle. When I'm talking to a customer who's interested, but I'm looking, maybe this is not the right thing for you. But I cannot say that, right?
Yeah.
In the sales cycle. But more than that, I've been in an onboarding cycle where I'm talking to the customer, trying to understand what they signed up for, and they're all gung ho and everything. But then there's a voice in the back of my head saying, "Well, did you do this? Did you do that?" And it sort of rhymes well with what you're saying. So if you could expand on that, on how you'd identify whether customer success is right for you or not. Thank you.
Yeah, really good question. So I heard a couple things in there. I heard you ask about right fit customers possibly, and if customer success is right for the company. Because I was talking about if customer success was right for the company, but to answer in regards to right fit customers, so you actually sell customer success software, right? So you're, okay. So I see why you're asking if customer success is a right fit, because maybe they're buying the software and it's not gonna be a right fit because customer success is not gonna work for them.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. So for me, it's all about who the customer is. Now, who their customer is, right? And does the customer have skin in the game? And skin in the game, I mean, are they paying you a reoccurring revenue? Or are they giving you a contract that's going to make them value your partnership? If they do not value your partnership, it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to be able to set them up for success because they're not going to participate in that success. And if they're not going to participate in that success, it's doomed from the beginning. So that voice that you're hearing in your head when you're having those conversations and you're thinking, ooh, why are you buying customer success software? I don't think you need customer success. I think you really need to explore that a little bit deeper and figure out how your sales team, and I don't know if you're part of sales, but how your sales team is identifying these customers and getting them through the pipeline. And talk to them about when customer success is a right fit at a company and when it's not. Because you're gonna end up having to deal with the churn and the backlash from that. Because if they don't have customer success in its truest format, they're not gonna need a customer success tool.
So I agree completely with what Miranda said, and I think the thing to look for is what value are they getting out of customer success? Why did they form a customer success team? You're probably not selling to someone that doesn't already have a customer success team, because you sell customer success automation software. So they have a team, or they're planning to build a team for customer success. Now maybe they have a B2C or a partnership thing where the software itself, they can use kind of the tech touch, the workflow aspects of it to automate some interactions with their customer, and there's value there. But if there's no value to them, and that's the skin in the game that I think Miranda's talking about, if they can't quantify the value, so I can give you some examples like in security, if you work in the security space, people buy different kinds of security appliances and things as an insurance policy. They don't plan to be hacked, they don't want to be hacked, they don't expect to be hacked, but they have to do something for compliance reasons. They have to have something in place so that they don't get hacked. They might still get hacked, whether they have it or not. That's the reality of the world we live in today. But having customer success around that when the purchase is all about compliance, and they don't really see the value there, they're buying an insurance policy, it's really hard to have customer engagement in that model. It's really hard for them to want to engage with you and see the value of what it is that they're doing. And also how the go-to-market works. If it's sold through a partner channel, and there's no direct, if their product, your customer's product, is sold through a partner channel, and they don't have direct contact with the customer, they may not even know who the customer is because it comes through the channel partner, and all those deals come in under channel partner ABC. You know, and they may be 200 customers that are listed in your Salesforce under channel partner ABC. It's going to be really hard to manage a customer success team under those circumstances.
But in that case, it's almost more critical to have customer success because you need to actually help the customer understand, looking at the data, where the threats have been mitigated and how to turn the dials so that they can actually mitigate the new threats. I would say it's even more important in the security case.
Well, it depends on if it's an appliance, a physical hardware, not so much.
If there's dials to turn and data to
Yeah,
look at,
if it's
critical.
software, then that's
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
Like if it's application level or something like that,
Yeah.
that's something else. There's all different use cases.
Yeah, the other thing that I would say on that is I think it's critical to have that conversation with your sales team about qualification. So that you can have that feedback loop, because if the sales team is selling
Yeah.
to customers that aren't the right fit and passing off that
Yeah.
challenge to the customer success team to solve, then you have to get in front of that and have the relationships to make sure that you break that cycle. Because especially for a startup that's looking to go a certain direction, if the sales team is veering you in a direction that is not the right fit, you are gonna have a churn problem, and that churn problem isn't necessarily fair, depending on customer success,
Yeah.
if you inherited it through a poor fit sale.
So just to repeat for the video, so it's about bad fit customers and assessing and qualifying the bad fit customers, because if your team doesn't qualify those, you're gonna end up with a churn problem down the road that is hard for the success team to mitigate, and it's really shouldn't be there. It's a lack of alignment on the management side of things for where you're selling and what you're delivering.
Yeah, one of the other, oh, thank you.
Let's do this
This
instead
is
of
easier.
repeating it, yeah.
Exactly. So one of the other things that could be done during the onboarding process is to ask the customer, what outcome are they looking for? Are they looking for process efficiency? Are they looking for productivity? Like the answers to those questions will drive sort of what's the values that they're trying to get at.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that should
so-
actually come through the sales
I
process.
was just gonna jump on that. I was like, oh, give me the microphone.
Yes.
I actually agree with that. That should come definitely through the sales handoff. If you have a sales handoff document or process, that should be a question right at the top. What are they solving for? What does ROI look like for them? What does success look like for them? Sales should ask those questions when they're scoping out if it's a right fit customer or not. And if they're not, then you're gonna end up with the issue that Max explained.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so just to add to that, I think having that type of checklist at the end of a sales cycle is also too late most of the time, because to your point, Miranda, firing a customer is tough, it's a distraction, it potentially impacts brand. No one wants to do it, but sometimes it's the absolute right thing. However, if you can build that checklist and that motion up front in the sales, early in the sales process with the sales reps, you always don't have customer success leaders or individuals that are involved in those deals up front, but if the sales team can do that on your behalf, it makes things so much easier. And it's hard for any salesperson to say, you know what, I'm sorry, but this is not a good deal. This is not a fit for us that we're
Feels
Oh,
to be successful.
unnatural.
Yeah,
But
but
in
I think if you can do that, it's so powerful.
In the
Yeah.
subscription world, you absolutely have to qualify, and it is about, that's what Max was talking about, qualifying. So it's very early in the process that you qualify a lead into a prospect, right? It really should be at that point that you get rid of your bad fit customers.
Oh, we have one back here. Oh,
So that being said, do
Here,
you
I got it.
think,
Wait.
so listening to all of you, and I'd really like your opinion on this, do you think customer success can get prescriptive and define what a good fit customer should look like?
yeah, I think it should come from, customer success should be part of that conversation.
Yeah.
Customer success has the data, has the information, has the relationships, knows what, a good renewal looks like, knows, customer success is the aggregator of all of that information and is partially responsible for helping define that and feed that. I have hands going up everywhere, I don't know where to go first. I'm like here and here and here.
Just real quick.
Okay.
So real quick, we're working with some customers who are introducing the customer success motion during the pre-sales process. So then you create a customer success plan before the sale is made. And that kind of lays a great foundation for future work.
And I agree with, is it on?
Yeah, you just gotta hold it like ice
I
cream.
agree with what.
Karaoke.
In that it's your obligation as a customer success leader to communicate that back into the rest of the organization and to readjust the marketing messages and the sales motions so that you've identified what that perfect customer is.
Yeah, pipeline it.
Yeah.
We are the pipeline.
And product.
And product, yeah.
So I've worked with a couple companies where we've had very complex,
Can you hold the microphone?
so we've had
There
very
you go.
complex solutions that we were delivering to the marketplace. And one of the things that we did, a checklist, or what I call listing points. When you hear something in the sales cycle, it's like, aha, it fits into this box. But what we had to do was, as part of the success team, is created solution architects that were some of the most experienced people inside the organization. And so it wasn't just that they were going out to every single sales pursuit. We provided a bank of hours, almost as if they were on a retainer, to the sales team and said, here, for this month, you get this person, and this person. We had it broken up by geography and said, you can use them on any sales pursuit you want, but this is the block of hours, which was easy for us to schedule and kind of monitor. But we lend them out to those sales pursuits, whether it was in person for very large clients or sometimes just over the phone, and they could actually be that advocate or that solution architect as part of the sales cycle.
That's really genius. Yeah. Oh, we got someone else.
So to change gears slightly,
Yeah.
so first part of it is it a good fit, your sales to customer success transition? Then the other part of it is also working with your product and engineering team.
Yeah.
I would love to hear what folks' experiences have been of building a stronger relationship between customer success and our engineering and product teams.
So I can tell you that I build that relationship everywhere I've worked. I've also owned support, which also is another feedback loop into the product team, because when you're starting to get a lot of tickets around one particular thing, it's a change in the product. But depends on the company culture. So at least 2 of the companies I've worked for have had a CEO who came from engineering. And so they have a very strong bias towards product and engineering, and they think, I actually had a product manager at one of those companies tell me, I don't care what the customer says. Now, he didn't last too long, okay? But he did say that, he actually said that in an E-staff meeting. I don't really care what, I know better than they do. He had a little bit of a Steve Jobs attitude, He thought he was the next Steve Jobs. But actually, that feedback loop to product is really, really critical. And that's where the voice of the customer program can come in really, really strongly.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet where I'm currently at, but at previous organizations, I actually made it part of the goals for the customer success teams. It was on their scorecard. Like, how many product feedback items have you provided from your customer base? Put an MRR or an ARR on it. I want to know who, I want to know how much they're paying us, and then I want to follow it, and I want to see how it goes through the pipeline, so you can quantify it, and you can tie revenue to it. So I've done that at a few companies now, and it's been incredibly critical in building a story around, one, not only how are we solving for today's customers, but two, how are we growing and scaling and retaining these customers and helping customers stay with us for the long term. And when I first did it, you would have thought that it was the most genius thing that I had ever done at the organization. And I thought it was just like, why don't we just tie money to these product requests and see how they flow through the pipeline? So,
Yeah, to build on what you were.
Before, just let me just finish an answer on this. So, also, if you don't have, especially in an early stage company where priorities are really critical and you've got a product roadmap that's already oversubscribed by the amount of engineering resources that you have, you've got to carve out some sustaining engineering. And there are different models to how you can do that. And I negotiated with our head of engineering that I would get so many stories a month. And I also got myself put on the product committee. So I sat in the monthly and the quarterly product meetings where we set the strategy for what things had priorities, and we had to have a certain amount of sustaining engineering for what customer requests and customer fixes were going into it. But there are also companies that will add a role called customer success engineering into their customer success team, where they build kind of